didn't give them her password. She didn't even give them her PIN number to the account, okay? So she unknowingly gave them the keys to the bank account. Number four, the wire transfers, they happen pretty fast. There were multiple wire transfers. They were large dollar amounts, all within days. That should have triggered red flags. Number five, the bank denied reimbursement, and the bank's position was simple, okay? If it looks like you're playing a role into the scam, whether you knew it or didn't know it, if you shared codes, that makes it look authorized. That's authorized activity. And pretty much to them, it's end of story. Now, this is the hardest truth that you need to hear. Banks protect systems, not mistakes. If a transaction, if it looks like it's authorized on paper, the banks will deny the claim, even if you were the one manipulated, even if it feels unfair, even if it destroys, yes, your life savings. That's why prevention matters more than recovery. Now, let's talk about how to avoid this scam completely. Now, these are not suggestions. These are rules that you need to follow. Let's start with number one. Never respond to fraud text messages. Not yes, not no, not stop, nothing. You can actually call the direct fraud department by calling the number on the back of your debit card just in case. Number two, never trust inbound calls. I don't care what the caller ID says. Most banks are not going to call you. And here's why. Caller IDs can be spoofed, which means it can look like the bank is calling you, but it's someone else. Number three, never share verification codes. Here's why. No bank employee needs your one-time code ever. Even if they ask, it's a scam. Number four, always initiate contact yourself. Like I just mentioned, it's on the back of your debit card. There's a phone number directly to the bank, or you can log into your bank app directly or go to the website online, but not from a link that you got from someone, not from a text message that you just got from someone. Number five, you want to lock down your wire transfers. Ask your bank to require in-branch approvals for wire transfers. Then add a verbal passphrase. You also want to set daily wire limits. Most people never do this, and that's why scammers target them. Number six, separate large balances. Don't keep all of your life savings in a single checking account. It should be in a high yield savings account, if anything. Use multiple accounts. You also want to keep daily spend money separate from your reserves, which is your main savings. You want to keep those separate from each other. Now, here's why this can happen at any bank. This is important. This was not a Chase Bank problem. So this means Wells Fargo, Bank of America, credit unions, online banks, all of them, they use similar authentication systems. So it's not uncommon that you would get a fraud text message. But if you're not sure if it's them or not, that's why I said don't respond. Scammers don't hack banks. They hack people. Now, here's what you should do immediately if this happens to you. And here's why. I need you to probably write this down. Time matters. Hours are going to matter. Number one, call your bank immediately. Use a number on the back of your card. Then ask for the fraud department. You also want to get in the habit of documenting everything, because this could mean whether you get your money back or not. Number two, go to a branch in person. Escalate it to a supervisor. And that won't take much at all, because you can also ask for wire recall attempts as well, even if it's a long shot. Number three, file a police report. You will need it. And most banks are going to require it, especially if you're trying to get your money back. And don't skip this step, because a lot of people do. Number four, file a complaint with the CFPB while they're still around, okay? This is going to force a formal response, and it's also going to create a great paper trail for you as well, too. Banks are going to take these seriously. Number five, freeze your credit scoring reports, even if the scam was bank related, because you don't know what all information they were able to get. You want to protect yourself from the next thing that they try to do. Number six, change everything. I know that this is a hassle. This is going to be your bank login, along with your email password, your phone carrier PIN number, and even enable account alerts for every transaction. Because again, we don't know how far they're going to take it since they have your information. Now, here's why banks push responsibility back on you. And I know some people don't want to hear this, but here's the blunt reality. Banks are going to argue that number one, the system worked, the customer approved the action, and the loss was preventable. Now, whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter, okay? That's the framework that they operate under. Now, of course, if you skip some of those steps and you take it to a local news station, that might increase your chances. But this also means that your job is to never let it get that far anyway. Here's a breakdown. If someone contacts you claiming to be your bank, here's the final takeaway. Assume that it's fake. Slow everything down. And you also want to verify independently. You want to protect your codes like cash. Don't just be giving this information out willy-nilly, because once that money moves, getting it back is an uphill fight. Remember, this scam, it didn't rely on stupidity. It relied on trust. And that's exactly why it keeps working. I'll see you at the next video.
Yeah. And this is the reason why I wanted to play this video, is because I know, a lot of us out there, we've been corralled and conditioned, and that's my opinion, corralled and conditioned to follow these different protocols. But see, the thieves know that. The scammers know that. And it's horrible what happens to people. I think they made a movie about it. It was The Beekeeper. My husband and I watched that movie. He was so upset. He was like, I can't stand scammers. It's go crazy. And Felicia Rashad, she actually played one of the main characters in the movie. And they took her for her life savings, saying, oh, you have a bug or whatever. And then she allowed them entry into her computer, right, via one of those like little team type apps. And they stole her life savings. And they do this all the time. Like, this is real life. Like, they've literally shut down organizations. And a lot of times they're overseas, right? Sometimes they're here in the United States, but they are complete networks of nothing but scamming and taking people for millions of dollars. The crypto one is the biggest one, and that one's still going on. Where they get people like, oh yeah, if you send us so much crypto, we'll send you this much crypto back. Scam. Complete scam. And there's nothing they can do about it because it's decentralized. So once you actually send somebody your crypto, it's gone forever. There's nothing police can do about it. There's nothing anyone can do about it. Scammers are real. And I just want to make sure that you guys, my audience, are safe. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to get into some more of this news. And thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. And I will see you on the other side.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. With the energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. At longevity. At exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation. Take your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Shaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And we actually had some feedback from somebody, and I'm so sorry that this happened to you. You said that's exactly who it is, because I said it might be somebody in the bank. It's someone in the bank. This unnecessary reaching out happened to me at Chase. After a settlement check I deposited, the banker I opened the account with was Indian. That's crazy. That is insane. And they were trying to get all this access. You're like, what? Why are you in my business so hard? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? We have to watch everybody. We can't assume that anybody's clean. Sorry. And good morning, sassy lady. Thank you for joining me. And Spud says, I begged my parents to watch that movie. It was actually, it was a good action movie, but it was just so heartbreaking to see the scamming and the level. And they were so proud of all the evil that they were doing and destroying people's lives. Literally, it was really crazy. It was really crazy. And they look at that lady's life saving, which led her to, yeah. And that was the really sad part, because she felt like she had let everybody down. And it truly wasn't her fault, the way it went about, because she was innocent. She thought, oh my, I can't access my computer. She was sent an email. It created a virus, triggered them. They call like, oh, we noticed this happened. We're calling from whatever, like Microsoft or whatever. And older people, they're not that tech savvy. And these scammers know that. And that was the sad part about the movie. And so we're going to get into our next video. And it's talking about a recent Supreme Court hearing that's the Supreme Court, they have been on their job this session. I'm like, okay, I got to keep up with you guys, because this is good. I like it.
The Supreme Court just dropped a bombshell that nobody saw coming. A rare unanimous 9-0 ruling that fundamentally rewrites the balance of power between federal agents, state courts, and local law enforcement. And it landed at the worst possible moment, while Minnesota is experiencing a constitutional crisis that has left residents, federal agents, and state officials in a standoff that's been escalating for the past 72 hours. This isn't just another dry legal decision buried in court documents. It's a nationwide earthquake that changes your rights the next time any badge shows up at your door, and it's taking effect immediately. No waiting period, no phased implementation. Federal officers operating in Minnesota right now learned about these new rules from alerts on their phones this morning, and what happens over the next 96 hours will determine whether this ruling prevents chaos or triggers it nationwide. Before we unpack why all 9 justices from Sotomayor to Thomas found common ground on this explosive issue, hit subscribe, because the legal revolution unfolding right now will affect every American regardless of where you live. Let's cut through the legal jargon and explain exactly what the Supreme Court did. In a massive opinion that spans multiple companion cases, the justices unanimously struck down decades of legal doctrine that governed how federal and state law enforcement coordinate operations and how state courts interpret federal law. The majority opinion, authored by Chief Justice Roberts but joined by every single justice, including the 3 liberal appointees, represents the most significant unanimous decision on federal-state relations in over a decade. Here's what makes this so explosive. The court addressed 2 critical issues in parallel rulings that arrived within hours of each other, and together they're creating a perfect constitutional storm. First, in the law enforcement coordination case, the court ruled that federal agents can no longer operate within state territory without following state-established coordination protocols. For decades, federal officers could execute warrants, make arrests, and conduct searches by simply flashing a badge and claiming federal authority. That's over. The court declared this practice violates the 10th Amendment's anti-commandeering principle. When federal agents operate inside a state without coordination mechanisms established by that state's legislature, they effectively conscript state resources, including roads, emergency services, and public safety infrastructure, to execute federal policy. The Constitution doesn't allow the federal government to commandeer state sovereignty this way. Second, in the state court interpretation case, the court ruled that state courts have been fundamentally misinterpreting the Supremacy Clause when it comes to enforcing federal law. For 40 years, state courts in 23 states have developed their own interpretations of federal statutes, often providing more generous remedies or broader liability than federal courts would allow. The Supreme Court just said that entire framework is unconstitutional. State courts can no longer create their own standards for enforcing federal law when those standards are more restrictive or more generous than what federal courts would apply. This affects everything from employment discrimination to consumer protection to environmental enforcement. Translation? Your rights under federal law now depend entirely on federal court standards, and federal agents must follow state coordination rules to operate. Both changes take effect immediately, and Minnesota is ground zero for watching this play out in the most dangerous way possible. 3 days ago, a routine federal drug enforcement operation in Minnesota collided with a state law enforcement operation targeting the same location. Neither agency knew the other was moving. When federal agents breached the property at 6:14 in the morning, they encountered armed state investigators who, operating under Minnesota's strict warrant restrictions, mistook the uncoordinated federal entry for a home invasion. Shots were fired. No fatalities, but 2 state investigators were hospitalized. That single incident triggered Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to activate an emergency provision in the state's Public Safety Act called an emergency jurisdictional freeze. Under this statute, when federal and state operations conflict within state boundaries, the governor can temporarily suspend all federal enforcement actions until protocols are reestablished. Governor Walz issued the freeze order Tuesday night, 8 hours before the Supreme Court released its ruling Wednesday morning. So now we have a perfect constitutional storm, a governor exercising emergency powers to block federal operations based on state law, while the Supreme Court simultaneously rules that federal agents never had constitutional authority to operate without state coordination in the first place. The Department of Justice filed an emergency motion within hours, arguing the governor's freeze exceeds state authority. But here's what DOJ lawyers aren't saying publicly. Their own internal memos from 2 years ago acknowledged this exact scenario was legally precarious. A leaked opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel warned that continued reliance on uncoordinated federal enforcement creates significant vulnerability to 10th Amendment challenges. The administration chose to ignore that warning while prioritizing immigration and drug enforcement metrics. Now that vulnerability has exploded into a full-blown crisis on the streets of Minnesota, but there's a sleeper provision buried in the court's opinion that almost nobody noticed yet. And it's the part that transforms this from a jurisdictional dispute into a tool that states and counties can weaponize. It appears in a concurrence by Justice Kagan, just 87 words that legal scholars are already calling the sovereignty trigger. Here's what it says. Nothing in this opinion prevents states from establishing opt-out registries whereby local jurisdictions may formally decline participation in specific categories of federal enforcement actions, provided such declinations are enacted through transparent legislative processes rather than executive fiat. In plain English, the Supreme Court just greenlit a constitutional pathway for counties and cities to formally refuse cooperation with federal law enforcement on specific policy areas like immigration raids, drug interdiction, even certain financial crime investigations, without triggering federal preemption challenges. Minnesota's legislature, anticipating this exact scenario, passed the Local Autonomy Enforcement Act 6 months ago, creating precisely the transparent legislative process Kagan referenced. The law established a digital registry where county boards can vote to opt out of federal enforcement categories by simple majority. As of 9:47 this morning, 43 minutes after the ruling dropped, sheriffs in 7 Minnesota counties had already filed opt-out declarations. 4 counties declined all immigration enforcement cooperation. 2 rejected federal drug task force participation. 1 county opted out of everything: immigration, narcotics, firearms trafficking, even federal witness protection operating within their borders. The sheriff there put it
Okay. I'm gonna have to pause right there. You opted out of it. So like, nope, we want all the crime in our neighborhood. We do not want you to come in and take anybody. Like, this is desperation of criminality. But let's continue.
bluntly in his press conference. My deputies answered to the voters of this county, not to a U.S. attorney who's never set foot in our jurisdiction. If federal agents want to operate here, they coordinate through my office, or they don't operate at all. This isn't sanctuary city rhetoric anymore. It's constitutional doctrine blessed by a unanimous Supreme Court. Within hours, attorneys general in Vermont, Oregon, and New Mexico issued statements confirming they'd activate similar opt-out registries within 24 hours. Texas and Florida announced they'd pass legislation requiring all counties to cooperate with federal enforcement, setting up an inevitable collision where state law demands cooperation while the Supreme Court just affirmed localities' right to refuse. But here's the terrifying gap nobody's addressing. What happens when federal agents ignore these opt-outs? The ruling strips federal courts' power to force state cooperation, but it doesn't criminalize federal agents who operate anyway. It creates a constitutional gray zone where federal officers could still enter opt-out counties and make arrests, but that evidence would be inadmissible in federal court, and the agents themselves could face state charges. This exact scenario unfolded in Wright County, Minnesota, where 2 immigration agents attempted to serve deportation orders at a facility 30 minutes after the county filed its opt-out declaration. When county sheriff's deputies arrived and ordered the federal agents to stand down, one agent reportedly responded, "You don't have authority over federal immigration enforcement." The sheriff's body cam footage shows the standoff lasting 11 minutes before the federal agents retreated. The template is now set, and the next confrontation might not end peacefully. While politicians debate doctrine, real people are trapped in the enforcement gap, and the human cost is accumulating hour by hour. Let's talk about what's happening to domestic violence victims in opt-out counties, a crisis unfolding right now that transforms abstract sovereignty debates into life-or-death emergencies. Maria Flores is a pseudonym for a real woman in a Minnesota county who called 911 yesterday after her husband threatened her with a firearm. Under the Federal Violence Against Women Act, she qualified for emergency relocation and witness protection through the U.S. Marshals Service because her abuser has a prior federal firearms conviction. But her county filed its opt-out declaration this morning, specifically declining cooperation with all federal witness protection and victim relocation programs. When county deputies arrived at her home,